TIL that instead of using pesticides, the Mexican state of Coloma releases billions of sterile fruit flies who then outcompete the fertile ones for mates. That's awesome, and yet somehow these kinds of solutions always seem to go drastically wrong. Like one day there will suddenly and mysteriously spear a mega fruit fly that does incalculable damage and cannot be killed. Scientists find some inexplicable DNA match to the formerly released sterile fruit ensues. This sort of thing always sounds great and frequently ends in disaster. It shouldn't, but it's as if nature doesn't like humans playing God too much and ultimately finds a way to punish us for it. IAEA uses nuclear facilities for peaceful civilian stuff like this all the time. This is commonly used here in America as well. Our government and IAEA cooperates with anybody who wants to do this, as a way of encouraging non-dangerous uses of atomic stuff. The article mentions there specifically males what stops the fertile male fruit flies from mating with a female after an infertile male has already done so? Not questioning their tactics, just curious. Are the infertile males leaving some kind of undesirable radiated mark on the females after mating? Or is it just a quantity over quality thing? I dealt with a fruit fly infestation at my house once. It took months to get all of the little bastards under control and I was still finding them occasionally a year later. Had to repaint the walls because they left fruit fly goo behind everywhere. Fruit flies are no joke, you see one you better get on top of it fast. In America, we mass blast concrete with chemicals to keep little bits of vegetation from sprouting. You know, because those plants would besmirch the beauty of our concrete jungle. We need to take some notes on this general approach to poisons. Irradiation with gamma rays was used to sterilize mass-reared medflies so that, while they remain sexually competitive, they cannot produce offspring, decreasing the population over time. I was wondering how they sterilize so many flies. There is a faculty in Panama that releases sterile screwworm flies to keep them from spreading into North America. Their larvae infest any open wounds of both livestock and people, quote literally eating them alive. The US has a screw the fly production facility in Panama where they do the same thing to keep screw the flies out of the US. It saves billions a year. Screw fly maggots eat cattle alive. Earlier this week there was a front page post about how flying insect populations are down like 60 and how that's really bad for the planet. Imagine that! Sterile insect technique has been used all over the world to eradicate locally all sorts of nasty species like screwworm, CC fly, medfly. This is so random. I'm reading the Harry Bosch book by Michael Connelly Black Ice and this process has just been explained in the last chapter. I guess this is the equivalent of releasing a horde of femboys, sterile fuckboy, and genetically engineered infertile catgirls into humanity. This reminds me of Jurassic Park. Away! Those sterile fruit flies develop some mutation which allows them to mate. Won't this eventually cause the fertile fruit flies to become way more efficient at reproducing in order to pass off their offspring? Old news and this won't work. Jordan Peterson has been releasing his listeners into public for years, and no one is fucking them. California does this as well. In the LA area you can see small planes fly a zigzag pattern releasing the flies. TLDR Mexican government cucks fruit flies. Sounds like an Alex Jones conspiracy and I can't help but laugh. California did that with fruit flies back in the 90s, but that infestation was the result of bioterrorism. Great, more dead bugs. Aren't the insects on the planet being decimated at an unprecedented amount already? But then who will pay for yachts for the execs of our shady and super dangerous petro AG industry? All I wanted was to a life studying insects and now I have to do 1 billion small vasectomies. Even fruit flies have more sex when they know they won't get stuck paying child support. But then why do they keep doing it? It doesn't work and there are even more fruit flies. Can't we do this with mosquitoes too? Seems it could solve a rather global problem if so. Imagine that poor guy that sits on a little stool sterilizing fruit flies all day. Co-blocking for capitalism. This seems much better an idea than chemicals. They did the same thing back in the 1960s and virtually eradicated screw flies. If you haven't been to Coloma, you should. Beautiful place and laid back folks. Isn't stuff like this what James Tiptree Jr. based the screw the fly solution on? Life is already difficult. Imagine your woman stolen by a castrated dude, disappointed face. How do they cut off the functional bits of the fruit flies they release? Oh, the screw fly solution. That's one of the really interesting new approaches to insect management. So, what's the point of releasing sterile fruit flies if they're sterile? So my restaurant has a freaking fruit fly horde. Where do I buy these? Coloma. You mean Coloma? Never heard of the state of Coloma before. Shh, don't let the movie studios know. Life might, Find a way. There's a natural solution to everything. You just have to find it. One guy does a sterilization. He uses a very tiny red hot poker. How do they outcompete them? Is there a tournament or something? This has been done in California since at least the early 80s. How do they make the sterile ones hotter than the virile ones? But then Monsanto can't make giant oil tankers full of money. Oh, this is really cool. Wonder what the negative effects are. Ah, yes, the state of Coloma. Right next to the Pacific Ocean. And people wonder why the insect populations are declining. The tough part is performing billions of tiny vasectomies. TIL Coloma is the same as the Mexican state Coloma. Lol. Who covers the bill for all the fruit fly vasectomies?